Part 21, Chapter 11. Hudson had the portable tactical console set up next to the colony's main computer terminal. Wires trailed from the console to the computer, a rat's nest of connections that enabled whoever sat behind the tactical board to interface with the colony's remaining functional instrumentation. Hicks looked up as Ripley entered operations and slapped a switch to kill the alarm. Vasquez and Hudson joined her in clustering around the console. "They're coming," he informed them quietly. "Just thought you'd like to know. They're in the tunnel already." Ripley licked her lips as she stared at the console's readouts. "Are we ready for them?" The corporal shrugged, adjusted a gain control. "Ready as we can be, assuming everything we've set up works. Manufacturer's warranties aren't going to be a lot of use to us if something shorts out when it's supposed to be firing. Like those sentry guns. They're about all we've got." "Don't worry, man. They'll work." Hudson looked better than at any time since the initial assault on the processing station's lower levels. "I've set up hundreds of those suckers. Once the ready light comes on, you can leave 'em and forget 'em. I just don't know if there'll be enough." "No use worrying about it. We're throwing everything we've got left at them. Either the RSS guns'll stop 'em, or they won't. Depends on how many of them there are." Hicks thumbed a couple of contact switches. Everything read out online and operational. He glanced at the readouts for the motion sensors mounted on A and B guns. They were blinking rapidly, the strobe speeding up until both lights shone steadily. At the same time, a crash of heavy gunfire made the floor quiver slightly. Guns A and B, tracking and firing on multiple targets. He looked up at Hudson. "You give good firepower." The Comtech ignored Hicks, watching the multiple readouts. "Another dozen guns," he muttered under his breath. "That's all it would take, if we had another dozen guns." A steady rumble echoed through the complex as the automatic weapons pounded away beneath them. Twin ammo counters on the console shrank inexorably towards single digits. 50 rounds per gun. How are we going to stop them with only 50 rounds per gun? Hicks muttered. "They must be wall to wall down there." Hudson gestured at the readouts. "Oh, look at those ammo counters go. It's a shooting gallery down there." "What about the acid?" Ripley wondered. "I know these guns are armored, but you've seen that stuff at work. It'll eat through anything." "As long as the guns keep firing, they ought to be okay," Hicks told her. "Those RSS shells have a lot of impact. If it keeps blowing them backward, that will keep the acid away. It'll spray all over the walls and floor, but the guns should stay clear." That certainly seemed to be what was happening in the service tunnel, because the robot sentries kept up their steady barrage. 2 minutes went by. 3. The counter on B gun reached 0, and the thunder below was reduced by half. Its motion sensor continued to flicker on the tactical readout as the empty magazine tracked targets it could no longer fire upon. "B gun's dry. 20 left on A." Hicks watched the counter, his throat dry. 10. 5. That's it. A grim silence descended over operations. It was shattered by a reverberating boom from below. It was repeated at regular intervals, like the thunder of a massive gong. Each of them knew what that sound meant. "They're at the fire door," Ripley muttered. The booming increased in strength and ferocity. Audible, along with the deeper rumble, was another new sound, the nerve-wracking scrape of claws on steel. Think they can break through there? Ripley thought Hicks looked remarkably calm. Assurance or resignation. One of them ripped a hatch right off the APC when it tried to pull Gorman out, remember? She reminded him. Vasquez nodded towards the floor. That ain't no hatch down there. It's a Class AA fire door. 3 layers of steel alloy with carbon fire composite laid between. The door will hold. It's the welds I'm worried about. We didn't have much time. I'd feel better if I'd had a couple of bars of chromite solder and a laser instead of a gas torch to work with. And another hour, Hudson added. Why don't you wish for a couple of Katusha 6 anti-personnel rockets while you're at it? One of those babies would clean out the whole tunnel. The intercom buzzed for attention, startling them. Hicks clicked it on. Bishop here. I heard the guns. How are we doing? As well as can be expected. A and B sentries are out of ammo, but they must have done some damage. That's good, because I'm afraid I have some bad news. Hudson made a face and leaned back against a cabinet. Well, now there's a switch. What kind of bad news? Hicks inquired. It will be easier to explain and show you at the same time. I'll be right over. We'll be here. Hicks flipped off the intercom. Charming. Hey, no sweat, said the jaunty Comtech. We're already in the toilet, so why worry? The android arrived quickly and moved to the single high window that overlooked much of the colony complex. The wind had picked back up and blown off the clinging fog. Visibility was still far from perfect, but it was sufficient to permit them a glimpse of the distant atmosphere processing station. As they stared, a column of flame unexpectedly jetted skyward from the base of the station. For an instant, it was brighter than the steady glow that emanated from the top of the cone itself. Oh man, what was that? Hudson pressed his face closer to the glass. Emergency venting, Bishop informed him. Ripley was standing close to the Comtech. Can the construction contain the overload? Not a chance. Not if the figures I've been monitoring are half accurate, and I have no reason to suppose they are anything other than completely accurate. What happened? Hicks spoke as he walked back to the tactical console. Did the aliens cause that, monkeying around inside? There's no way to tell. Perhaps. More likely, someone hit something vital with a smart gun shell or a blast from a pulse rifle during the fight on sea level. Or the damage might have been done when the dropship smashed into the base of the complex. The cause is of no import. All that matters is the result, which is not good. Ripley started to tap her fingers on the window, thought better of it, and brought her hand back to her side. There might be something out there listening. As she stared, another gush of superheated gas flared from the base of the processing station. How long before it blows? There's no way to be sure. One can extrapolate from the available figures, but without any degree of certainty. There are too many variables involved that can only be roughly compensated for, and the requisite calculations are complex. How long? Hicks asked patiently. The android turned to him. Based on the information I've been able to gather, I'm projecting total systems failure in a little under 4 hours. The blast radius will be about 30 kilometers. It will be nice and clean. No fallout, of course. About 10 megatons. Well, that's very reassuring, said Hudson dryly. Hicks sucked air. We got problems. The Comtech unfolded his arms and turned away from his companions. I don't believe this, he said disconsolately. Do you believe this? The RSS guns blow a pack of them to bits, the fire door's still holding, and it's all a waste. Is it too late to shut the station down, assuming the instrumentation necessary to do so is still operational? Ripley stared at the android. Not that I'm looking forward to jogging across the tarmac, but if it's the only chance we've got, I'll take a shot at it. He smiled regretfully. Save your legs. I'm afraid it's too late. The dropship impact, or the guns, or whatever, did too much damage. At this point, overload is inevitable. Terrific. So what's the recommended procedure now? Vasquez grinned at her. Bend over, put your head between your legs, and kiss your ass goodbye. Hudson was pacing the floor like a caged cat. Oh man, and I was getting short too. 4 more weeks and out. 3 of that in hypersleep. Early retirement. 10 years in the Marines and you're out and sitting pretty, they said. Recruiters, man. Now I'm gonna buy it on this rock. It ain't fair, man. Vasquez looked bored. Give it a break, Hudson. He spun on her. Well, that's easy for you to say, Vasquez. You're a lifer. You love mucking around on these alien dirtballs so you can blow away anything that sticks up bug eyes. Me? I joined for the pension. 10 years and out. Take the credit and buy into a little bar somewhere. Hire somebody else to run the joint so I can just kick back and jab chat with the customers while the money rolls in. The smart gun operator looked back towards the window as another gas jet lit up the mist-shrouded landscape. Her expression was hard. You're breaking my heart. Go cross a wire or something. It's simple. Ripley looked over at Hicks. We can't stay here, so we've got to get away. There's only one way to do that. We need the other dropship, the one that's still on the Sulaco. Somehow we have to bring it down on remote. There's got to be a way to do that. There was. You think I haven't been thinking about that ever since Ferro rolled ours into the station? Hudson stopped pacing. You use a narrow beam transmitter tuned for just the dropship's controls. I know, she said impatiently. I thought about that too, but we can't do it that way. Right, the transmitter was on the APC. It's wasted. There's got to be another way to bring that shuttle down. I don't care how. Think of a way. You're the Comtech. Think of something. Think of what, man? We're dead. You can do better than that, Hudson. What about the colony's transmitter? That uplink tower down at the other end of the complex. We could program it to send the dropship a control frequency. Why can't we use that? It looked like it was intact. The thought had occurred to me earlier. All eyes turned towards Bishop. I've already checked it out. The hard wiring between here and the tower was severed in the fighting between the colonists and the aliens. One more reason why they were unable to communicate with the relay satellite overhead, even if only to leave a warning for anyone else who might come to check on them. Ripley's mind was spinning like a dynamo, exploring options, considering and disregarding possible solutions until only one was left. So what you're saying is that the transmitter itself is still functional, but that it can't be utilized from here. The android looked thoughtful, finally nodded. If it is receiving its share of emergency power, then yes, I don't see why it wouldn't be capable of sending the requisite signals. A lot of power would be necessary since all the other channels it would normally be broadcasting on are dead. Well, that's it then. She scanned her companions' faces. Somebody's just going to have to go out there, take a portable terminal and go out there and plug in manually. Oh, right, said Hudson with mock enthusiasm. With those things running around? No way! Bishop took a step forward. I'll go. Quiet, matter of fact, as though there was no alternative. Ripley gaped at him. What? He smiled apologetically. I'm really the only one present who is qualified to remote pilot a dropship anyway, and the outside weather won't bother me the way it would the rest of you. Nor will I be subject to quite the same degree of mental distraction. I'll be able to concentrate on the job. If you aren't accosted by any passing pedestrians, Ripley pointed out. Yes, I'll be fine if I'm not interrupted. His smile widened. Believe me, I'd prefer not to have to attempt this. I may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid. As nuclear incineration is the sole alternative, however, I'm willing to give it a try. All right, well, let's get on with it. What do you need? The portable transmitter, of course, and we'll need to check to make sure the antenna is still drawing power. Since we're making an extra-atmospheric broadcast on a narrow beam, the transmitter will have to be realigned as precisely as possible. I will also need some... Vasquez interrupted sharply. Listen! To what? Hudson turned a slow circle. I don't hear anything. Exactly. It stopped. The smart gun operator was right. The booming and scratching at the fire door had ceased. As they listened, the silence was broken by the high-pitched trill of a motion sensor alarm. Hicks looked at the tactical console. They're into the complex. It didn't take long to get together the equipment Bishop needed. Finding a safe way out for him was another matter entirely. They debated possible exit routes, mixing information from the colony computer with suggestions from the tactical console, and spicing the results with their own heated personal opinions. The result was a consensual route that was the best of an unpromising bunch. It was presented to Bishop. Android or not, he had the final say. Along with a multitude of other human emotions, the new synthetics were also fully programmed for self-preservation. Or, as Bishop ventured when the discussion of possible escape paths grew too heated, on the whole he would rather have been in Philadelphia. There was little to argue about. Everyone agreed that the route selected was the only one that offered half a chance for him to slip out of operations without drawing unwelcome attention. An uncomfortable silence ensued once this course was agreed upon, until Bishop was ready to depart. One of the acid holes that was part of the colonists' losing battle with the aliens had formed a sizable gap in the floor of the medical lab. The hole offered access to the maze of subfloor conduits and serviceways. Some of these had been added subsequent to the colony's original construction and tacked on as required by Hadley's industrious inhabitants. It was one of these additions that Bishop was preparing to enter. The android lowered himself through the opening, sliding and twisting until he was lying on his back, looking up at the others. "How is it?" Hicks asked him. Bishop looked back between his feet, then arched his neck to stare straight ahead. The chosen path. "Dark, empty, tight, but I guess I can make it." "You'd better," Ripley mused silently. "Ready for the terminal?" A pair of hands lifted as if in supplication. "Pass it down." She handed him the heavy, compact device. Turning with an effort, he shoved it into the constricted shaft ahead of him. Fortunately, the instrument was sheathed in protective plastic. It would make some noise as it was pushed along the conduit, but not as much as metal scraping on metal. He turned on his back and raised his hands a second time. "Let's have the rest." Ripley passed him a small satchel. It contained tools, patch cables, and replacement circuit boards, energy bypasses, a service pistol, and a small cutting torch, together with fuel for same. More weight and bulk, but it couldn't be helped. Better to take a little more time reaching the uplink tower than to arrive short of some necessary item. "You're sure about which way you're going?" Ripley asked him. "If the updated colony schematic is correct, yes. This duct runs almost out to the uplink assembly. 180 meters. Say 40 minutes to crawl down there. It would be easier on treads or wheels, but my designers had to go and get sentimental. They gave me legs." No one laughed. "After I get there, 1 hour to patch in and align the antenna. If I get an immediate response, 30 minutes to prep the ship, then about 50 minutes flight time." "Why so long?" Hicks asked him. "With a pilot on board the dropship, it would take half that, but remote piloting from a portable terminal's going to be damn tricky. The last thing I want to do is rush the descent and maybe lose contact or control. I need the extra time to bring her in slow. Otherwise, she's liable to end up like her sister ship." Ripley checked her chronometer. "It's going to be close. You'd better get going." "Right. See you soon." His farewell was full of forced cheerfulness. Entirely for their benefit, Ripley knew. No reason to let it get to her. He was only a synthetic, a near machine. She turned away from the hole as Vasquez slid a metal plate over the opening and began spot welding it in place. There wasn't any maybe about what Bishop had to do. If he failed, they wouldn't have to worry about holding off the aliens. The bonfire that was slowly being ignited inside the processing station would finish them all. Bishop lay on his back, watching the glow from Vasquez's welder transcribe a circle over his head. It was pretty, and he was sophisticated enough to appreciate beauty, but he was wasting time enjoying it. He rolled onto his belly and began squirming forward, pushing the terminal and the sack of equipment ahead of him. Push, squirm, push, squirm. Slow going. The conduit was barely wide enough for his shoulders. Fortunately, he was not subject to claustrophobia, any more than he suffered from vertigo or any of the other mental ills mankind was heir to. There was much to be said for artificial intelligence. In front of him, the conduit dwindled towards infinity. "This is how a bullet must feel," He mused, lodged in the barrel of a gun. Except that a bullet wasn't burdened with feelings, and he was, but only because they'd been programmed into him. The darkness and loneliness gave him plenty of time for thinking. Moving forward didn't require much mental effort, so he was able to spend the rest considering his condition. Feelings and programming, organic tantrums or bite snits. Was there in the last analysis that much difference between himself and Ripley or, for that matter, any of the other humans? Beyond the fact that he was a pacifist and most of them were warlike, of course. How did a human being acquire its feelings? Slow programming. A human infant came into the world already pre-programmed by instinct, but could be radically reprogrammed by environment, companions, education, and a host of other factors. Bishop knew that his own programming was not affected by environment. What had happened to his earlier relative then, the one who had gone berserk and caused Ripley to hate him so? A breakdown in programming, or a deliberate bit of malicious reprogramming by some still unidentified human? Why would a human do such a thing? No matter how sophisticated his own programming, or how much he learned during his allotted term of existence, Bishop knew that the species that had created him would remain forever shrouded in mystery. To a synthetic, mankind would always be an enigma, albeit an entertaining and resourceful one. In contrast to his companions, there was nothing mysterious about the aliens. No incomprehensible mysteries to ponder, no double meanings to unravel. You could readily predict how they would act in any given situation. Moreover, a dozen aliens would likely react in the same fashion, whereas a dozen humans might do a dozen completely different and unrelated things, at least half of them illogical. But then, humans were not members of a hive society. At least, they chose not to think of themselves as such. Bishop still wasn't sure he agreed. Not all that much difference between human, alien, and android. All hive cultures. The difference was that the human hive was ruled by chaos, brought about by this peculiar thing called individuality. They'd programmed him with it. As a result, he was part human, an honorary organic. In some respects, he was better than a human being. In others, less. He felt best of all when they acted as though he were one of them. He checked his chronometer. He'd have to crawl faster, or he'd never make it in time.